What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest legends walks onto a morning show expecting a normal interview and instead gets ambushed by a host with an agenda? It only took one comment from Savannah Guthrie to turn a simple promotional appearance into the most explosive moment in Today Show history. Harrison Ford sat down on that familiar couch, the one millions of Americans see every morning while drinking their coffee. He was there to talk about his latest project. Nothing more, nothing less. The studio lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and everything seemed perfectly normal. But what was about to unfold would shock everyone watching. Savannah Guthrie smiled at the camera before turning to Harrison. "So, Harrison Ford, thank you for being here," she said, her voice carrying that practiced morning show cheerfulness. "We're so excited to have you." Harrison nodded politely. "Thanks for having me." "Now, before we get into what you're working on now, I think we need to address something," Savannah said, leaning forward slightly. Her tone had shifted, becoming more serious. "You've been in this industry for decades, and you've played some iconic roles, but don't you think it's time to pass the torch to younger actors? I mean, aren't you a little old to still be doing action movies?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Hoda Kotb, sitting next to Savannah, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. You could see it on her face, that look of surprise mixed with concern. Even she hadn't seen this coming. Harrison's expression barely changed, but his eyes, those eyes that had stared down countless villains on screen, fixed on Savannah with an intensity that could cut through steel. "I'm sorry. What exactly are you asking me?" "Well, I'm just saying," Savannah continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension building in the room. "There are so many young, talented actors out there who could use these opportunities. Don't you feel like you're taking roles away from them?" Craig Melvin, who was standing off to the side near the news desk, looked at his co-hosts with wide eyes. He knew this was going sideways fast. Al Roker, the beloved weatherman who had seen everything in his years on the show, stood frozen, watching the scene unfold with obvious discomfort. Harrison took a slow breath. "Let me understand this correctly. You invited me here to promote my work, and instead, you're telling me I'm too old and should retire?" No, that's not what I'm saying," Savannah backpedaled slightly, though her tone remained condescending. "I'm just asking if you've ever thought about it. You know, stepping aside, being more, I don't know, age-appropriate in your choices." "Age-appropriate?" Harrison repeated, his voice measured, but carrying an edge now. "That's an interesting phrase." Hoda tried to intervene. "Harrison, what Savannah means is—" But Harrison raised a hand gently, stopping her. "No, let her finish. I want to hear exactly what she means." Savannah seemed to take this as encouragement to continue. "Look, I think what audiences want to see is fresh faces. People they can relate to. And no offense, but can a 70-something-year-old man really be believable in these roles anymore? It just seems, well, desperate." The word desperate hit like a slap. You could hear the collective gasp from the crew off camera. Craig put his hand over his mouth. Al looked down at his feet. Hoda's eyes went wide with shock. Harrison sat very still for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "Desperate. You think I'm desperate?" "I'm just being honest," Savannah said, and there was something almost smug in her expression. "Isn't that what journalism is about? Asking the tough questions?" "Tough questions," Harrison said slowly. "Is that what you call insulting your guests? Because where I come from, that's just called being rude." "I'm not being rude, I'm being real," Savannah shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Somebody has to say what everyone's thinking." "Everyone's thinking?" Harrison leaned forward now. "Or just you?" Hoda tried again to salvage the situation. "Maybe we should talk about the new project, Harrison. Tell us about—" "No," Savannah interrupted her own co-host. "I think this is an important conversation to have. Harrison, you've had an incredible career. truly legendary. But don't you think there comes a time when you need to acknowledge that your time has passed? Harrison stared at her for a long moment. My time has passed. Well, I mean, look at the facts, Savannah said, counting on her fingers. The movie industry is changing. Audiences are younger. They want different things. And honestly, watching someone your age try to do stunts and action sequences, it's almost uncomfortable. It's like watching someone refuse to accept reality. Craig moved closer to the couch area, clearly wanting to say something, but not knowing how to interrupt. Al had his arms crossed, shaking his head slowly. Harrison's jaw tightened. So you're saying that because I'm older, I should just disappear? That I have nothing left to offer? I'm saying maybe you should be more selective, Savannah replied. Do dignified roles, character parts, things that make sense for someone at your stage of life. Not trying to compete with people half your age. Compete, Harrison said quietly. You think I'm competing. Aren't you? Savannah pressed. I mean, come on. Be honest with yourself. That was the moment. You could see it in Harrison's face, the exact second when he decided he'd had enough. He sat back, looked directly at Savannah, and said very clearly, I think I've been honest with myself my entire career. The question is, have you been honest with yourself about what you're doing right now? Savannah blinked. Excuse me? You heard me, Harrison continued, his voice steady and firm. You brought me on this show under false pretenses. You pretended this was going to be a normal interview, and instead, you've spent the last several minutes insulting me, disrespecting my career, and suggesting that I should just fade away because you've decided I'm too old to be relevant. I never said that, Savannah protested, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. You said exactly that, Harrison countered. You called me desperate. You said watching me work is uncomfortable. You told me my time has passed. Those were your words, not mine. Hoda jumped in, trying to smooth things over. Harrison, I think what we're trying to explore here is just the evolution of Hollywood, and no, Harrison said, still looking at Savannah. That's not what this is. This is someone who thinks they can sit behind that desk and tear down people who've been working in this business since before she was born. This is arrogance disguised as journalism. Savannah's face flushed. Now wait just a minute. I have every right to ask challenging questions. Challenging questions, Harrison repeated. There's a difference between challenging and disrespectful. You crossed that line the minute you suggested I was too old to do my job. I'm sorry you feel that way, Savannah said, using that classic non-apology that people use when they're not actually sorry at all. I don't want your non-apology, Harrison said flatly. I want you to understand something. Age doesn't make someone irrelevant. Experience doesn't make someone disposable. And the fact that you think it does says a lot more about you than it does about me. Craig finally spoke up. Maybe we should take a quick break and... No break, Harrison said, standing up from the couch. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard. I'm done here. Savannah looked shocked. You're leaving? We're in the middle of an interview. No, we're in the middle of an ambush, Harrison corrected her, and I don't participate in ambushes. He reached up and removed the small microphone that had been clipped to his shirt. The sound of the mic being unclipped echoed through the studio in the sudden silence. Harrison, please, Hoda said, standing up as well. Don't go. We can talk about your project. We can... Hoda, you seem like a good person, Harrison said, his tone softening slightly when he addressed her. But I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected on national television. I have too much respect for myself and for my career to do that. Savannah stood up too, and now she looked angry. So you're just going to run away? That's your response to a difficult conversation? Harrison turned to look at her one more time. A difficult conversation would be discussing the challenges of aging in Hollywood, the way the industry treats older actors, the lack of good roles for people over 50. That would be difficult but worthwhile. What you did was personally attack me and then act surprised when I didn't just sit here and take it. I was doing my job, Savannah insisted. No, Harrison said quietly, but firmly. You were being cruel. There's a difference. Al Roker spoke up for the first time. Harrison, man, I've got to say, I think you're handling this with a lot of grace. Harrison nodded at Al. Thanks, Al. I appreciate that. Savannah wasn't ready to let it go. So that's it? You're just going to storm off like a child? Harrison stopped and turned back to her. A child? That's your next insult? First, I'm too old. Now I'm acting like a child. Make up your mind, Savannah. I'm just pointing out that you can't handle criticism, Savannah said, her voice sharp. Criticism? Harrison said, shaking his head. You keep using these words like they justify what you're doing. Criticism is constructive. What you did was destructive. You wanted to make yourself look tough by tearing me down. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it. Hoda put her hand on Savannah's arm, trying to signal her to stop, but Savannah pulled away. You're being incredibly sensitive about this. And you're being incredibly insensitive, Harrison shot back. But I guess that's your brand now, right? Say something offensive and then act like the other person is the problem for being offended. Craig moved between them slightly. Okay, everyone, let's just calm down for a second. I am calm, Harrison said, and it was true. Despite everything, he hadn't raised his voice once. He'd been measured, clear, and direct. I'm also leaving. He started walking toward the edge of the set, past the cameras and the stunned crew members who were watching this entire thing unfold. Savannah called after him. You know what? Fine. Leave. But don't expect anyone to feel sorry for you. You're a millionaire who can't take a little heat. Harrison stopped walking. For a moment, it looked like he might turn around. The entire studio held its breath. But then he just shook his head and kept walking. That's right. Walk away, Savannah continued, her voice getting louder. Just like you're walking away from reality. You can't stay young forever, Harrison. None of us can. Now Harrison did turn around, but he didn't walk back. He just looked at her from across the studio. You're absolutely right, Savannah. None of us can stay young forever. But we can choose to stay kind. We can choose to treat people with respect. We can choose to use whatever platform we have to lift people up instead of tearing them down. I've tried to do that my whole career. Maybe you should try it sometime. The silence that followed was deafening. Hoda had tears in her eyes. Craig looked like he wanted to disappear. Al was nodding slowly, clearly agreeing with every word Harrison had just said. Savannah opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time in the entire exchange, she seemed at a loss for words. Harrison took one last look around the studio, at the crew, at the cameras, at the set he'd walked onto less than 15 minutes ago, expecting a normal morning show interview. Good luck with the rest of your show, he said finally. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. And with that, he walked off the set. The moment he disappeared from view, chaos erupted. Producers were shouting, crew members were talking over each other, and someone yelled to cut to commercial. But the cameras kept rolling for a few more seconds, capturing Savannah standing there, Hoda looking devastated, Craig running his hands through his hair, and Al just shaking his head. We need to go to break, someone shouted from off camera. We're still live, another voice called out. Savannah finally found her voice. Well, that was, unexpected. Unexpected? Hoda said, turning to her. Savannah, what were you thinking? I was asking legitimate questions, Savannah defended herself, but her voice wavered slightly. Those weren't questions, Hoda said quietly. Those were attacks. Oh, come on, Savannah said, trying to regain her composure. He's a big boy. He can handle it. Clearly he couldn't, Craig said, or more accurately, he chose not to. And honestly, I don't blame him. Savannah looked at Craig with surprise. You're taking his side? I'm not taking sides, Craig said carefully. I'm just saying, if someone talked to me like that, I'd probably walk out too. Al walked over to the group. That was hard to watch, he said simply. It was an interview, Savannah insisted, but she was looking less certain now. That wasn't an interview, Al said, echoing what Harrison himself had said. I've been doing this for a long time, Savannah. That was something else entirely. Before anyone could respond, a producer rushed onto the set. We're going to commercial now. 30 seconds. The cameras finally cut, but the damage was done. What had started as a routine morning show appearance had turned into something that would be talked about for days, weeks, maybe even years to come. Hoda sat back down on the couch, looking shaken. I can't believe that just happened. He overreacted, Savannah said, sitting down as well, but her voice lacked conviction. Did he, though? Craig asked. Really think about what you said to him, Savannah. Savannah was quiet for a moment, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. I was just trying to have a real conversation. At his expense, Hoda said softly. You made it personal. He's a public figure, Savannah argued. He's fair game. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being cruel, Al said, repeating the same word Harrison had used. And I think you crossed that line. The producer came back. We're coming back from commercial in 10. What do you want to do? Savannah looked at her co-hosts, then at the empty space on the couch where Harrison had been sitting just minutes ago. We'll move on to the next segment. Are you going to address what just happened? The producer asked. Savannah hesitated. I don't know. Should I? Yes, Hoda said firmly. You absolutely should. And say what? Savannah asked, and now she actually sounded uncertain. Maybe start with an apology, Craig suggested. He's not even here, Savannah pointed out. The audience is, Al said, and they just watched you drive away one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Savannah took a deep breath. Fine, I'll say something. 5 seconds, the producer called out. The cameras came back on, and Savannah's professional smile was back in place, though it looked more forced than usual. Welcome back. As you just saw, our interview with Harrison Ford took an unexpected turn. That's one way to put it, Craig muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Savannah shot him a look before continuing. Things got heated, and Harrison decided to leave. I want to say that, I was trying to have an honest conversation about ageism in Hollywood, but perhaps I could have approached it differently. Perhaps, Hoda said quietly. Savannah's smile faltered slightly. Okay, I should have approached it differently. I clearly upset him, and that wasn't my intention. What was your intention? Al asked, and it wasn't accusatory, just genuinely curious. Savannah paused, clearly not expecting to be put on the spot by her own co-host. I wanted to talk about important issues. By making him the villain? Craig asked. I didn't make him the villain, Savannah protested. You kinda did, Hoda said gently. You questioned his relevance, his choices, his career. You called him desperate. Savannah shifted uncomfortably. It came out wrong. Did it come out wrong, or did you mean it? Al pressed. This was unprecedented. The hosts were essentially confronting each other on live television, and Savannah was the one in the hot seat now. I don't know, Savannah admitted, and for the first time, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. I thought I was asking the questions that needed to be asked. But who decided those questions needed to be asked? Hoda challenged. Harrison came here to talk about his work. Instead, you made it about his age, his worthiness, his place in the industry. That's not journalism, Savannah. That's judgment. The studio was incredibly quiet. The crew, used to the polished, rehearsed nature of morning television, was watching this raw, unscripted moment play out. Savannah looked down at her hands. I may have gone too far. You did go too far, Craig said bluntly. And honestly, the way he handled it, with dignity and class while you kept pushing, that says a lot. About him or about me? Savannah asked, her voice small. Both, Al said. He showed who he is. You showed who you are. And America just watched the whole thing. Savannah looked at the camera, and you could see the realization dawning on her face. This wasn't just a moment that would pass. This was going to follow her. I think, Hoda said carefully, maybe you owe Harrison an apology. A real one. He walked off the set, Savannah pointed out. Because you gave him no other choice, Craig said. What did you expect him to do? Sit there while you insulted him? Savannah didn't have an answer for that. The producer's voice came through their earpieces. Wrap this up. We need to move on. But how do you move on from something like that? How do you go from a moment that intense, that raw, that real, to the cooking segment or the weather forecast? Savannah tried. We have a lot more show ahead, so let's move forward. But even as she said it, you could tell she knew that moving forward wasn't going to be easy. Not after this. Not after the whole world had just watched Harrison Ford, one of the most respected actors in Hollywood, walk off her show because of how she treated him. Al stepped in, sensing that Savannah needed help. Coming up, we have an amazing cooking segment that I think you're all going to love. Hoda nodded, grateful for the lifeline. Yes, and later we'll have the latest news and weather, Craig added, plus some incredible stories from around the country. They were trying to salvage the show, trying to get back to normal, but normal had just walked out the door with Harrison Ford. As they went to another commercial break, Savannah slumped back in her chair. That was a disaster. Yes, it was, Hoda agreed, not sugarcoating it. What do I do? Savannah asked, looking at her co-hosts. You own it, Al said. You made a mistake. A big one. You own it, and you learn from it. Will people forgive me? Savannah wondered aloud. Craig shrugged. I don't know. But that's not really the point, is it? The point is whether you can forgive yourself for treating someone that way. Savannah was quiet, processing everything that had just happened. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional spot had turned into a defining moment, one that revealed character, tested limits, and ultimately led to one of the most dramatic walkouts in morning television history. And somewhere, Harrison Ford was probably already on his way out of the building, leaving behind a studio full of people who were all trying to figure out what had just happened and what it meant. The show would go on. It always did. But this moment, this exchange, this confrontation between a legendary actor and a morning show host who pushed too hard would not be forgotten. It would be replayed, discussed, analyzed, and debated. Because in those few minutes, something real had happened on live television. Something unscripted and unplanned. And in an age where so much of media is carefully controlled and managed, those rare moments of genuine conflict, of real emotion, of someone standing up and saying enough is enough, those moments matter. Harrison Ford had drawn a line. He had said no. He had walked away. And in doing so, he had reminded everyone watching that there are some things more important than staying on a show, more valuable than playing nice, more crucial than going along to get along. Dignity, respect, self-worth. Those were the things Harrison Ford walked out with intact. And those were the things that Savannah Guthrie would have to reckon with in the aftermath of the most explosive interview of her career.